that I had found the place I had always wanted to be. To have found the place you always wanted to be, that is the secret of this book. Rowlands tells us how he happened to get to Cache Lake, but he wisely never tells us how he happened to leave. We have only MIT's word that he did. And it is the perfect glory of Cache Lake country that reading it for the first time, or for the first time in a year, is like paddling out of the Narrows onto a small open lake bordered by white pines and hemlock, moose at browse in the weed beds along one shore, a loon calling across the ripples, and pausing, like a fellow will, pausing for an entire year. In Cache Lake country, the months pass slowly, one by one, beginning in the snows of January and ending in the snows of December, while with his two good friends, Chief Tibiash, an aging Cree Indian, and Henry B. Kane, the book's illustrator, both living on nearby lakes, Rowlands guides the reader through a year in the life of the North Woods. Let me tell you what I learned from this. I learned that nature works with reason, and though its reasons are often harsh, they are just as often beneficent. In January, Rowlands writes, we generally have a thaw that reminds us of a spell of April weather, which is to make sure that the water is spread around fairly. I learned that real danger, the source of real fear, can be understated without minimizing it. If you get snow blindness when you're alone on the trail, you're in a fix and no mistake. I learned that it is delicate business comparing what is easy with what is hard. If you have common sense, Rowlands says, you don't often get into trouble, and every time you do get into trouble, you learn something about common sense the hard way. I learned that if you lived in the North Woods, you would want to be able to cook and sew and garden as well as fish and hunt and sharpen an axe. And in this book, I also had what I consider my first real contact with a culture not my own, that is, with the Cree. In Chief Tibiash, Rowlands found a sagacious North Woods tutor, and he passes along to his reader every lesson that he can. From Tibiash I learned that in most of the matters that were important to me as a boy, if only in imagination, the way you paddle a canoe, for instance, the track your footsteps make, the respect you show for game, your ability to read the real meaning of a newly bent blade of grass, a broken twig, or water slowly oozing into a hoofprint in the mud, there was no higher praise than to be taken for an Indian. The Boy Scouts had tried to teach me all of this, but Rowlands and Tibiash did it without the condescension or the treacle. As you will be able to tell at a glance from Henry Kane's illustrations, this is a work brimming with woodcraft. With patience, you can learn from its pages how to make a rabbit-skin robe or an Indian drum, build an ice boat or smoke a fish, pack for a week's canoe trip, or weather a blizzard in the open. But there is a catch to all this. Those two young men, Jim Rowlands and Hank Kane, not to mention Tibiash, were possessed by a demonic ingenuity. What they couldn't do with a length of quarter-inch brass pipe and a long winter can't be done. And they lived in an era of canvas and wood. Goods were shipped in barrels that could be turned into reading chairs. Friends came to fish and left behind fencing foils, which could be filed into bait rods. Theirs is a strange, old-fashioned world filled with unfamiliar things they just happened to have on hand. Substances like sugar of lead, for instance. Theirs is a place where time stretched out far enough on all sides that a man, for that is how Rowlands puts it, could turn himself to good use in just about every direction. As for women in Cache Lake country, they come in the form of sisters and grandmothers. Wherever men boil water is how Rowlands begins some talk about the sound of tea kettles. You will not have listened to this book properly unless you mess up the house trying some of the projects Rowlands describes. Start easy. Fry up some leftover oatmeal. Sew yourself some moccasins out of an old blanket. Make a bird's Christmas tree the way Rowlands does. When summer comes and the grass...